Hello everyone. In this video, we'll be learning about lambda expressions, map and filter functions. Lambda expressions are expressions which helps us to make the function short and simpler to write. Let's write a function to double a particular value. So what I do here is I create a function with using the def keyword and then I return the 2 times of the argument. Let's pass a value to it. I'll call the function and then use 5 in it. We get the output 10. So it doubles the value here. What if I tell you I can write this function in a one line without using the def and return keywords? Well, it's possible using the lambda functions. Let's create a lambda function to double the value. I'll use the name double and use the lambda keyword. Then I'll be passing the argument that will be passed to the function here. So let's say it's n followed by a semicolon and then the expression that we should return. So here we return 2 times of the value. So I'll write 2 into n. Now let's use the lambda function. It gives the same output and we wrote the function in an easy way. So the whole point of using lambda functions is that it is so easy and quick to write them. I'll show you an example where we write a 5-line of function into a single line using lambda function. So we'll be creating a function which returns the bigger value out of the 2 values. I'll name it bigger followed by 2 arguments. So if x is greater than y, we return x, else we return y. Now let's pass 2 values to check which one is bigger. I'll be passing 5 and 10 here. We get the output 10 as 10 is bigger than 5. Now let's write this function in a single line using lambda. I'll call it big. I'll use the lambda function. Here we are using 2 parameters. So I'll write 2 parameters followed by a semicolon. Then let's write the condition. If x is greater than y, we return x, else we return y. So here we are using the ternary operators which you have studied earlier with the lambda function to write a function in a single line. Now let's call this big function and check it out. Here we get an output 15, which is the bigger among 2 values. Lambda function can take any number of arguments, but the expression should be a single one. So the syntax of lambda function is that we'll be using the lambda keyword followed by arguments, then a semicolon and the expression that should be returned. These lambda functions are used in machine learning a lot because they offer easy readability and short to write. Now let's learn about the map function. So what map function does is it applies the same function to all the elements in the sequence and returns a new list. So let's create a list and have some values in it. Now What if you want to square all the numbers in the list? We'll be creating a function called square it, and we'll be passing the list into it. Let's create a new list and let's iterate through all the values in the argument. Then we add the square of it. So we'll be appending the square of each value into this new list. Now we will be returning the new list that has all the outputs. Let's call this function and pass the list to it. Then let's print the output. Here we see that every value in the list is getting squared and we get a new output here. By using map functions combined with lambda, we can write all these in a single line of code. Now let's try it out. I'll name the output as squares and the output that we should get is a list. So I'll call the list function. Then we'll call the lambda function, which takes two parameters. One is the function that should be applied on every value in the sequence followed by the sequence. So the function is lambda, the argument x, and we'll be returning the square of it. This will be the function, and the sequence that we are using is the list here. Now let's print the output squares list. We see the same output here where the map function has applied the same lambda function to all the values in the list and it returns a new output. In map function you need not use only lambda functions, but also you can use any functions. So if I create a function called foo and do some computations and return a value, it applies this foo function to all the values in the list and returns us the output here. The next function that we will be discussing is the filter function. Let's comment these codes. And now let's learn about the filter function. What filter function does is, we'll be having a condition and it checks this condition to all the values in the sequence and it returns us an output where it only has the values which satisfies the condition. So let's create a list 1 2 3 with values 1 2 3 4 5 6. Now let's create a function which returns only odd numbers in the list. So I'll be using def keyword and create the new function and I'll be passing the list into argument into it. Then I'll be creating another new list to have only the values which are odd numbers. Then I'll iterate through the list and now we'll check the condition if the value is an odd number or not. So for value mod 2 gives us 1, it is an odd number. So any number which is divisible by 2 returns a remainder 0. If the remainder is 1, it's an odd number. So if it's odd number, we append the value. I should pass through the n list. Then let's return the output. Let's create a list and use this of function, which returns only the odd values present in the list. Now let's print the value. Here we see that only the odd numbers present in the list is getting outputted. So now let's use the filter function to write this code in a single line. I'll comment these codes and write the new function. Let's create a variable called output, and the output should be a list. So we'll use the list, and now let's use the filter function. Filter function also takes two arguments. One argument is the condition and the other argument is the sequence that we should iterate through and check the condition. So here we'll be using the lambda function, and let's mod the value by 2, and the list that we'll be passing is this list li. Now let's print the output. Here we are getting the same output. So with the help of filter and lambda function, we made these 7 lines of code into a single line. The same way how map function takes general function into the condition, filter function can also take it. So I can define a function called foo and apply it to all the values in the list, and only for the values which satisfies this foo function, it returns it. I hope you understood about what are lambda functions and how to use map and filter functions to do the necessary operations. See you again in the next video.